It's good to have you here. I have got something for you that I hope will be meaningful to you. In the strict sense of a word, it's probably not typical of a normal sermon, but I believe that there are so many biblical aspects to what we're talking about that we can certainly make it look like that. But we've been doing a series, once a month sort of participation in a series all about time. We've got a problem. Is this for permanent, Phil? All right, tell me when. Okay. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Okay, we're going to be continuing that series all about time, where we've been looking at the different aspects of what time is about. And we've kind of looked at time in the context of the decades of our lives. We've looked at the issue of, sorry, I know I'm going to have to write as well. Let's just get this thing sorted first. Yeah, that's a good filler. Sing it 5 times. Okay, here we go. All right, thank you for filling. Thanks for filling my time. Okay, here we go. We've been looking at time in the context of the different decades of our lives. We've been talking about the first decade, which goes from 0 to 10. The question of that decade is the question of, do you like me? Remember, kids know you love them. They want to know, do you like them? Then we go up to the 20s, where every teenager out there is asking him or herself, who am I? And they go to the dumbest sources to find that information. If they would just come to us, we would happily tell them. And then we go through to the 30s, and this is the area where the big decisions of who to marry and what careers to embark upon. These are the careers that hopefully will take you into life, and the choice of a life partner is a big deal. And then we get to the 30s to the 40s, and we look over here, and we see my beautiful picture of the headless chicken without his head, who's running all over the place. Life is so hectic, life is so busy, life is so full of demands, and we look like we need some help, and indeed we do. So at this particular point, we'll talk about what it means to get a mentor and a help to guide us through that phase of life. And then we come to the 50s over here, and we use the picture of a rugby ball, and we said it's half time. And the idea there is to take your success that you've derived so far and turn it into significance. At half time, you are evaluating the first half of your life. You're looking at the things that you have achieved, the things that you have done, and you're learning from the first half, based upon the successes and the failures, how to play the second half of your life. And the question of that is, how satisfied am I with this particular point in my life? Thank you, Phil. You're dressing me up here. And then we got to this one, which we did last time, was the one where we were looking to say, well, if there is blessing out there, where is that blessing found? And we realized that blessing is found somewhere outside of the box of our lives. These areas here are the areas where blessing is. If you're looking for the blessing of your life at that particular phase, it's not found in that which was once normal. It's found outside of the box of your life. You've got to stretch the boundaries. You've got to find something outside of there that will make meaning and purpose to your life. What we come to today, and today I have a picture for you that looks like this. That's a man's head. These are his eyes. That's his mouth, and he's gnashing at his teeth. He is sweating a lot. And the question of this generation, of this decade, is the question of, how long can I keep going? How long can I still keep up the energy to keep me going in that which I once found significance in? How long can I keep doing the things that once defined me? You see, you spent the first 50, 60 years defining yourself, and the world will look at you and say, oh, I know that person, this is who he or she is. And you've defined yourself by the things that you've done, the values that you've had, the good things, the bad things, the indifferent things that you've done, has led to a place of you defining who you are. And now you get to this stage from the 60s to the 70s where you're saying, how long can I sustain this? This is hard work. This is high energy. How long can I sustain what I've spent all my life defining? And it's a tough time of life. If you want to know if you're going into this or already in this phase of the 60s to 70s, let me give you some of the symptoms that you can expect or maybe experience already. The symptoms are physically, you don't feel the same. Physically, you're finding you don't have the same strength. You've got aches and pains that have come upon you now. Physically, you just can't keep up with the younger generation. Mentally, you're slowing down. You're slowing down. I used to be reasonably good at remembering names. Now I'm terrible. I'm awful. And some of you know this. You look at me and say, what? You don't even remember my name? Please forgive me. I'm in this age group. The 60s is the 80s. Is a time of mental stress. It's a time of emotional uplift, of emotional stagnation where we almost feel like we're running on empty sometimes, and we're just going through the motion, and everything is just press a button and go through the same thing because that's all I know how to do. And we've got this emotional devastation running through where we spend more time managing our energy than managing our time. I used to spend time managing time. This is what I will do. Boom, 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 boom. Now I'm not managing time anymore as much as I'm managing energy. I only have so much. I therefore have to spread it across the things that I have. And I don't have the same energy that I once had. And I'm exhausted. And we get to that phase where we feel in the 60s to 70s like this. Circumstantially, our parents have probably died. Our friends begin to die. Those that we grew up and went to school with. And when we think of them in their teenage years, the guys have died, and they're very ill, or else your friends are no longer what they used to be. You attend more funerals than you do weddings, and then it comes to temptations in your life. The temptations change. The temptation of this particular phase is a temptation of territorialism. I'm in my territory. Don't threaten me. Don't threaten me, because if you threaten me, I'm going to be angry. And fear is the root of that anger. I'm so fearful that you'll see that I'm not what I once was. And we become fearful. We become terribly grumpy. We become so grumpy as we try and hold on to our territory. Some of us will get bitter. Some of us will be skeptics. Some of us will even worse become cynics in this particular phase of our lives because we are threatened. We're threatened by the new generation coming through. We're threatened by the energy of those who could do things better than we could. We're threatened by good new ideas. We're threatened by the young people that will come through and want to take us to another level. And we'll do whatever we can to hold them down because we still feel we have a... This is a period of preparation for what will take place over here. So it's all about preparing ourselves to simply let go. How do we let go of something that we spent all our lives doing? How do we let go of something that my value has become part of who I am, that my identity is found in that thing? How do I let it go? Or I need to explain a better reason as to why you should let it go. Those are some of the symptoms of people in this particular time who don't manage it well. Contrast that, however, with some beautiful people who I have met in the course of my life. You know what, people? There is nothing more beautiful than a gracious old person. Nothing more beautiful than a grateful old person. Nothing more beautiful. They're not miserable anymore. They're not grumpy. They've lowered their expectations of people around them, and they are grateful and they are gracious to the core. And the success of young people doesn't threaten them anymore. They give away their power so they can have wisdom. They love new ideas. They are known for their humility. I have met some people like that. Older people who reflect Psalm 23. Psalm 23, the second last verse of Psalm 23, somebody says this, and goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. Something's following you. What is it? Is it snot and trana? Because that could be following you. Everywhere you go, you leave a trail of devastation and broken relationships and confusion. There are some people who do that. They look behind them and they see just that. But there are others who are able to look behind them and say, hey, grace and mercy, goodness and mercy are following me all the days of my life. And I look at some of these beautiful people I've spoken about, and everything behind them now is just goodness and mercy. It's just goodness and mercy. It's goodness and mercy. They are some of the most amazingly beautiful and gracious people out there. How do they do it? Well, I surmise that they've had to let go of something at some stage. Now, this age between 60s and 70s is all about letting go or being prepared to do that. In other words, they're learning to pass the ball. You know, we watched the rugby last night, and we didn't do all that well. I know we won, but it wasn't great. But the whole aspect is pass the ball to somebody who's in a better position than what you are. They talk about things like offloading. It's a term that they use in rugby, where you offload because you can see that you've got people coming against you who are bigger and stronger than you. So you look for somebody who's in a better position than you, and you offload. It's great terminology to be used today. Sometimes we need to offload responsibilities because what is coming against us is ominous and it doesn't look good, and I don't think I can win. Let me give the ball to somebody who can run better than me, who's in a better space than me. So let me offload some of that responsibilities. You see, the very things that once defined you, unless you recognize this, can now become things that confine you. They defined you, the person you are, but now, unless you let them go, they once defined you, but now they can confine you. Now, those of you who have ever studied any of this stuff will know that there was a guy many years ago called a guy by the name of Maslow. Have you heard of him? And Maslow came up with a theory of needs, the needs of mankind. And he says the first need of mankind is a physiological need. Now, forgive my spelling. I am rather old. There we go. Physiological. And where this is a need where I need food, and I need sleep, and I need something to drink. I won't be happy. I can't survive unless you meet me at the basis or the foundation of this particular need. Then he says, as he journeys towards the top of the triangle, the next need is that of security. I need to feel safe. I need to feel secure. I need a house. I need an income. I need something that will keep me going. Then he says there's a third elevation as you go towards the top of the triangle. That is the level of belonging. Everybody wants to belong to something. That's why people join clubs. That's why people are so invested in things like the church, where you feel that you belong. I want to be a part of something that is really cool. I want to have friends. I want to have relationships deeper than the superficial stuff of saying just hello. We want to belong. And then he says, above belong, there's a place where self-esteem is achieved, where you begin to fulfill what you thought was your mission. You begin to get to the top of your pile. You begin to get to the top of the workload or the place where you work. You get to the top, and people will elevate you and they'll applaud you. And that does something for your self-esteem that feeds your ego. You have arrived at the epitome of what you thought was really a good place to be. And then at the end of that, as you have achieved in the area of esteem, he says this. He says that you get to a place of self-actualization, where you realize, hey man, I've arrived. I've arrived. I've come through all these different levels, and now I have arrived. Now, Maslow was not a Christian. As Christians, we think that there is another level and another one even on top of that one. But the next level is this thing called self-transcendence, where we transcend above this, where we transcend above my actualization, where I begin to give back instead of taking more, where my ego is not so necessary anymore, where I find that I feel benefit from giving away my success in order to become what we spoke about the other day, significant. This is the realm that we're talking about. And this is the realm and the journey for those who are embarking upon the 60s to 70s. We've got to transcend above our egos. We've got to transcend above the things that we thought were important and the things that have become our identity. It's not easy. It's this good beyond self thing that we have to be able to find. Now, In the 30s to 40s, if you come back to the picture here, here's the 30s to 40s. Here's a bunch of people who are running wild. They need all the help that they can get. Chickens without heads can run into a lot of trouble. They can stumble over things. They can run into things because they can't see where they're going. They're so busy looking after what the boss wants, meeting their expectations of a family life. It's a tough time. It's very busy. So when we were at that level, we said to them, you guys need to find a mentor. You need somebody who will sit with you and just help you to keep your life on track, keeping the main thing. Somebody who will ask you all the tough questions. Everyone in that age group and other age groups needs something like that. Well, in the 30s to 40s, you need a mentor. In the 60s to 70s, you become the mentor. This is what gives great passion to this particular areas. You become a light for somebody else. Don't waste all the experiences that you've learned. I'm not taking anything away from here, but don't waste what you have learned by just thinking that that's as high as you could go. Now, a little while back, I have the privilege often of traveling, and I was sitting in an airplane, and it was an evening flight. The thing was dark, and there was a guy sitting across the aisle from me, and I began a conversation with this man. So I asked him, I said, well, what are you doing? He says, oh, no, I've just retired. I said, well, hey, that's cool. What are you going to do with your retirement? He said, man, I've made a lot of money, and I'm just going to enjoy myself. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to do all the things I wanted to do when I was a teenager, and I'm just going to live the perfect life. And I'm looking at him describing where he's going to go and what he's going to do. And at the end of his discussion and his description, which went on for about 20 minutes as to what he was going to do with his life, I boldly said to him, what a waste. What a waste. And he looked at me in shock. He said, what do you mean, what a waste? I said, you mean you're going to waste all of the things that you have learned in life? You're going to waste all the things that you could teach to other people? You're going to waste all that stuff on just self-actualizing and your self-esteem and enjoying life? Man, you have so much to give. You have had a great family. You've had a great business. You have got so much that somebody else could use to help them to achieve what you have achieved. Don't waste your life sitting, playing golf and going fishing. And I have nothing against golf. People think I hate golf. I don't like it, but I have no, you know what I mean. And don't waste your life doing that, people. There's so much more that you can do with that which you have learned. Please find somebody, and the key word is to invest in somebody. Invest in somebody. Anyway, we had this discussion on the airplane, and the guy was intrigued, and he's confused, and he, wow. Anyway, the plane landed, and we finished our discussion that I told him that don't waste his life, when a man who was sitting in front of us, in front of me, and I didn't realize it, but he was listening to our conversation. So as we got off the airplane, this man followed me, and he said to me, I need to tell you, I heard that conversation. You have changed my life. Because I was in the same state as that other guy you were talking to. Been successful, a lot of money, got great experience. And I'm never going to be the same again as a result of what you heard, what you spoke about. My challenge is, why has nobody told us this? All my life, while I've been doing all this stuff, nobody ever told me that there would come a day when I would have the privilege to be able to take what I've learned and invest it in somebody else. I can't wait to do this. So we're standing at the airport, the plane's landing, we're standing there, and this guy said, have you got time for a cup of coffee? I said, yeah, of course, I always got time for coffee. And I was waiting. So we had a cup of coffee, and I was able to explain the greater detail of what I'm talking about. Self-actualization is overrated, people. We have to transcend above ourselves at this phase, begin intentionally to move in this direction. So how do we do that? Right, here we go. First thing is, you need to embark upon random acts of kindness. Random acts of kindness. That's why Jesus told parables like the Good Samaritan. He didn't say this guy went out and saved the entire world from gangsters who beat up the Samaritan. He was just a good man doing good things for the right reason. And Jesus is advocating that you do the same thing. That you too will get into the ditch and the gutter with somebody and be able to encourage them and be able to cheer them on and put them in a stronger position so that when they're well and they're healthy, they can move on. That's why I'm so blessed by some of the ministries that go on in this church. My mind freaks out sometimes when I see people who have come through this process of just being experiencing somebody else's goodness. So for goodness sake, people, take this seriously. We need to invest in random acts of kindness. You know, I had a beautiful example of that this last week, and a picture is going to come up on the screen of somebody that I think you all know. I hope this is going to work. Do we all know that lady? She comes off police file. That is Heather Roots. That is Heather Roots, who's in this age group. We love Heather. She and Buddy are just absolute class people. They have found the joy of doing what I'm telling you about. You know what Heather did? A random act of kindness. She runs an aquarobic class. She's got this whole thing where these people get in water and they do all their exercises, and she's amazing. She's amazing. Well, she did a fundraiser using what she had in her hand. And she said, I'm an aquarobic instructor. I'm qualified, and I'm going to do this thing. If you need to go to one of those classes, enroll now, because there'll be a lot of people in part of her class. But here's the deal. She said, I'm going to raise some money for Genesis. Genesis is in need of some finance. So she had an aquarobic-a-thon, a swim-a-thon. And the ladies got in the water, and they did this thing. And she raised a considerable amount of money. And she donated it to Genesis, a random act of kindness. She had fire in her eyes. Yes, indeed. She had fire in her eyes. She was passionate about this thing. She was blessed more than the people because she had given something back to them and used the skill she had to be a blessing to someone else. People, random acts of kindness. Why don't we do them? Why don't we do them? Recently, I was sitting in a takeaway place in the States, and I went to buy a hamburger or something. And I walked to this place. It was sort of late-ish in the evening, and there was nobody in the place except one man. He was sitting down in the chair, and you could clearly see that this man was not in a good way. His clothes were old. He looked like he was kind of in a rough place mentally. And the man was just sitting there, and I was looking at him, and I was standing at the counter. So I said to the guy behind the counter, see that guy, do you know him? He said, yeah, I know him. He said, I said to him, do you think he's hungry? And the guy said, yep, I think he's hungry. So I said, why don't you feed him? Why don't you give him something to eat? This is a hamburger shop. Make the guy a hamburger. Would you mind feeding him? Now, in that place, there should be no excuse. That community should be revved, because there's no excuse for somebody like him not having a meal. There's no excuse there for people who are homeless. There's no excuse for hungry people in that place where there's so much abundance. There has to be somebody who will take it upon themselves to care for people like this. So I sat down next to him. So the guy behind the counter said, no, we haven't fed him. I said, why not? He said, well, it's not my job. And the guy said to him, well, why don't you feed him? He says, not my job, you feed him. So I bought him the biggest hamburger he could eat. And I went and sat down next to this guy, and I sat next to him, and we had this little conversation. I asked his name, and you know who left the most blessed that night? I'm sure he enjoyed his hamburger. I'm sure he enjoyed the fact that somebody shook his hand. I don't think anybody had touched him for a long time. Put my arm around his thing, and I said, can I just pray for you? And he said, oh, that'll be cool. You know, a random act of kindness. It's not because I'm anything good. I just understand the power of doing good. It's just a little thing. People, let's be known, if we are Christians, as people who embark upon random acts of kindness. Prepare yourself for that in this age. Then prepare yourself, secondly, to invest in those closest to you. I'm talking about your family. You know, the cycle of life goes all the way around. You start in family, and when you end and begin to get to this stage in your life, you begin to come close to the fact that everything ends where it begins. And investing in those closest to you. Those of you who are grandparents, you've got a great privilege ahead of you. Investing in the little lives of people who have come through your family. Not worry so much about your kids. They'll be fine. But your grandkids need you, people. Your grandkids really need you to invest in their little lives. And I met a couple a while back, and I used to take a little friend of ours, child, to swimming lessons. And she was about 3 or 4 years old. And I get the swimming lesson. There sits this senior couple. And I looked at the senior couple. They're too old to have children at this age. So I said, what are you guys doing? So they said, oh, no, we bring our grandkids here for swimming. They had twin girls. And they were so proud. There they are over there. Those are our 2 grandchildren. I said, that's so cool. What do you do? He says, we spend every afternoon raising our grandkids. We have projects for them. We go on missions with them. We do so many different things. We have so much fun. We have so much stuff. We sit down every week with a budget that their mom and dad give us, and we budget what we're going to do this week. We've taught these kids how to budget. We've taught these kids what's good. We've taught a whole bunch of things. And I said, he said, we picked them up for school. You know that? And when they finish school, we do their homework with them. And then we have time to invest in them the whole afternoon. And I'm thinking, this is so cool. And this elderly couple, was so fired up about that, which they were going to do with their grandkids. And as I sat there, I thought, that's what I want. That's what I want. I would invest in those closest to me. Invest in your spouse when you hit this age. You spent your entire life looking after other stuff and other people's stuff, and looking after them. They're not going to be at your funeral, pal. When you die, they're not going to be there. Invest in the people that are going to be there when you're on your last legs. Invest in them. Invest in your spouse. Eileen doesn't know what's going to hit her when I hit 70. She's going to be so sick and tired of me, because she spent her entire life investing in mine. She spent her entire life helping me to do the things that I can do so that I can be all of that other stuff in my building up or whatever I feel God has called me to. Time changes. And we reinvest now in the people who are closest to us. I hope you will do that. Embrace the realm of good beyond self. Embrace this. Proverbs 5 verse 11 says, at the end of your life you will groan when your flesh and your body are spent. That's true. Right? I like that they use the word spent. Everybody's spending their lives on something. What are you spending your life on? Question you have to ask. Are you spending your life on stuff that's going to make you look better? Well, there comes a day when that doesn't count anymore at all. Because at the end of the day, what God says about you is far more important than what people will say about you. Spend your life well. And at this phase in your life, it's going to become about where you want to make your investments. Random acts of comfort, of kindness, deeper relationships. But number 3, we need to start this phase here, embracing the priority to pray. When I first wrote this, I had it on my notes here, embrace the priority of prayer. No, that's not good enough. You see, over the course of our lives, I have spent, I don't know how many hours preaching on prayer. I'm not sure that it's motivated anybody to pray. But we preach on it. We give you all the knowledge. You know what prayer is about. You know how powerful it is. And you know we talk about a tool of prayer. And we know a lot about prayer. But at this phase, it's a great thing to be able to motivate yourself and embrace the opportunity to do it. To spend time constructively, intentionally at the place of prayer. Now, I'm the beneficiaries of the prayers of some good people. You too are the beneficiaries of prayer. Let me tell you who I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of, for me as a teenager, there was a pastor in our town who I loved very dearly. His name was Cyril Yeson. And he was part of our family. His wife died, and our family kind of adopted him. We used to call him the boss. He used to be the boss. So the boss was coming for dinner. The boss came for dinner almost every night. The boss was always at our house. The boss was the man. And we loved the boss. He left Zimbabwe and he came down to South Africa. He went to Scottsboro and he planted a church at 80 years of age. He planted a fully functional church at that age. He died when he was in his 90s. And when he was in his 90s, the family phoned and said, he's donated all his books to you. So I went with like a big truck to collect all his books. There were thousands of books. He gave them to me. And when I walked into his flat, just a simple little flat in Scotborough. On a bare wall, there was a picture on the wall. It was a picture of me. So I said to his family, we're packing his stuff, and I said, why is there a picture of me on the wall? And they said, this man loved you, and he prayed for you every single day. He prayed for you. My picture was on his wall. And then I meet other people. One of the heroes of our church is Uncle Nels Braderset, who built most of the church behind you, who was involved in the building of this one until he passed away at the age of 80. He could outwork any 25-year-old, this man. And I remember when Auntie Lilias, his wife, started going through dementia, Uncle Nels would sit with her at the house. And I remember visiting him one day because he couldn't come to build anymore. So I thought, I wonder what Uncle Nels is doing all day. And then Helene and I went round to his house and walked into his house, and he too had a wall full of pictures. You know his pictures? Yours. Your pictures were on his wall. The church people at the time. And I said, Uncle Nels, what is this? He said, no, this is like the War Room. Have you ever seen the movie The War Room? Where I make war against the devil on your behalf. People, that's a life well spent, man. He couldn't do his passion of build and go out there, but man, he turned that place into a war room of prayer. You want to know when you hit this age, when you hit your 70s, you better be prepared to pray more. Let's all have a war room in our cupboard, should we? I want to end today with just a few simple analogies that I hope, because of the simplicity of them, that you might grasp. If there's an international audience that watched the service online, then I apologize. But we have a great game in South Africa called rugby. And there are some rugby rules. I've already given you one about offloading. And I want to throw a couple of the rugby rules out there because they define so much about what we need to be doing. The first rugby rule that we have is don't die with the ball. Don't die with the ball, people. You know, look at Joshua, some of the great men of old. The sad thing as I read the Bible is not all good men finish well. We think that David and Solomon and Moses and Joshua all finished well. They didn't. They didn't complete the task that God had called them to. They did well, but they didn't finish well. And here's Joshua, taking the promised land. God said, drive out every enemy in the land. At the end of him driving out people from the land, there was still some left. He may have been a little bit under-resourced to be able to take them on, but there were still some enemies in the land, and they suffered the consequence of that for a long time. At the end of Joshua's life, it was said that Joshua, at the end of the time period, that everybody did what was right in his or her own eyes. I got to tell you, people, he didn't finish the job. He didn't raise up leaders. He didn't bring up other people to continue from where he was. He dropped the ball, and it took the book of Judges to try and pick the ball up, and they never could get it right thereafter. Please don't do the same thing. Don't drop the ball. And then what's even worse, don't drop the ball a yard from the try line. You fought your whole life to get there, and unfortunately you dropped the ball 1 meter from the try line. Kind of like Moses in Exodus 17. There was no water, and God says to him, hit the rock, and the water will come out. He hit the rock, the water came out. Then a little bit later, in Numbers 21, the people are thirsty again. And he says, Lord, there's no water. So God says, speak to the rock. Speak to it. And so he speaks. He doesn't speak to the rock. He takes his stick. And he says, hey, last time when I hit the rock with my stick, the people applauded me. And they said, hey, Moses, well done. We got water. You did something, Moses. Now he's thinking to himself, well, if I just speak to the rock, then, Lord, you're going to get all the glory. I'm sure you don't mind sharing a little bit of glory with me. And so he struck the rock. God was gracious and gave them water, but Moses lost his blessing. He didn't finish well. He never got that which was promised to him, to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. He stood and he watched as they prepared to go, but he never went himself. He dropped the ball 1 meter from the line. Some of you need to remember the rule of get back in the game. You know, we have yellow cards and red cards. Here's an interesting thing. God never gives a red card to anybody. You know that? Doesn't matter what you've done, there's no red cards in the Christian life. God never says, well, that's it, I'm done with you. You're out of the game forever. No, 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 no. God says, I'll give you yellow cards, and you go to the sin bin for a while. And once you come out of your sin bin stage, then you can get back in the game. You know, as I've watched rugby, and we've watched a bit of that recently, haven't we? When the guy gets a yellow card and he sits on his chair, I've never had anybody see a guy who said, okay, you're 10 minutes up, you can get back in the game. He says, no, I don't want to go. I'm sulking. You give me a yellow card. I don't want to get back in the game. My self-esteem. I've got a yellow. I'm sitting in the sin bin. And they're sitting on the edge of their chair, and they're watching. And as soon as that second hits, boom, 10 minutes, they're back on the field like anything. You know, that's how we should be. God is a holy God. Occasionally we mess up and we don't do well, and we get the proverbial yellow card, but it's not the end of the game. There's still time to go. So for goodness sake, when you mess up, never write yourself off, because God never writes you off. Never write yourself off and say, I've got a red card, I'm out of here. God's never going to forgive me. You get a yellow card, get back in the game again as soon as the time is up. I love that rule. And what about the rule that says, remember the home ground advantage? I don't know why it is. A rugby field is a certain dimension, you know. Wherever you go in the world, it's the same size. And yet we say the advantage of playing at home, the advantage of playing in front of your own crowd, the advantage of seeing your mom in the stand and your girlfriend out there, and you know, and that's the deal. And we have a home ground advantage when we play at home. Let me tell you, I love that verse, Hebrews chapter 12, that says this: since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders the sin that so easily entangles us. People, you have an audience. We often say the audience is one. The audience is bigger than one. The one big one is God. I know that. But the passage says there's a crowd of witnesses. Moses is watching. David is there. And as they see you doing the things that you should be doing in this particular phase, with your random acts of kindness, your kindness of people, your deepening of relationships, I've got two people, they get excited. And they begin to applaud when they see you doing well. And I love the picture of this huge gallery of the saints of old. Paul's there and he's watching the church. And he's saying, yes, go for it. There he goes. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And we are playing to an audience that is applauding us. How that works, I don't know, and I don't want to even discuss it because I can't understand it. But I just know it's to be true because the Bible says there is a crowd of witnesses witnessing. You are playing to a home crowd audience. So toughen up, suck it up, and get out there and play the best game that you possibly can. Just one last thought. As you hear the crowd cheering you on, listen to the voice. Hear them. Hear the angels, the crowd of heaven cheering you on as you embark upon the preparation for all that will take place over here. But here's that one last thought. Just now we spoke about Psalm 23 and we focused on goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. It doesn't end there. It says that I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now your investment comes to fruition. All that you've invested in people, random acts of kindness, God says will be rewarded one day. And I'm not being mercenary about this and saying let's do it so we get that, but let's do it so we get that. Because that's exactly what God... You know, at the end of a rugby game that you win, you celebrate the victory, don't you? Well, you do know that we're going to win the battle. We are. I've read the end of the book, so I know we win. We win. We win the battle against Satan and his demonic forces, and we will celebrate the victory, not just for 10 minutes, for the entire eternity. So when we spoke just now about spending your life, please spend it well. Please spend it well for the intention of growing God's kingdom and the good of people around you. Early next year, we'll be having what we call a ministry fair Because I know what's going through some of your minds, saying, well, what do I do? You've told me why I should do it. I need to tell you how you can do this. Once every now and then we have what we call a ministry fair, where we set up the church with booths and tables. And everybody who has a ministry in the church gets an opportunity to highlight their ministry. And you'll be able to walk around the whole building and you'll be able to find out about some of the ministries that our church has that are opportunities for you to invest in. But you don't need a ministry fair to do things I'm talking about. Just go and invest in the people around you. Those of you who run businesses, be kind. Be kind to your staff. Random acts of kindness goes across all barriers. To people who are different to us, to people we maybe don't like, to people who maybe have not done that great a job. Just show random acts of kindness. Go deeper with those closest to you, and you'll derive incredible joy, great benefit, not just for now, but for eternity. Okay, let's pray. Lord, we are so aware of our responsibility in life. We're not here just to breathe oxygen and take up space. We're on this place and on this planet to do your will and to make sure that your glory is returned to this earth and that your kingdom will come, your will will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's our mandate. So all we've been talking about right now is part of what we will do in this particular age group. And I pray, Lord, for all our 60s to 70s today, pray, Lord, that you give them incredible wisdom to be able to interpret well that which we've spoken about, not just to talk about it, but to apply it to their lives. Thank you for the privilege of knowing you, the privilege of serving you. And we declare today, Lord, our allegiance to you and to you alone. Not just allegiance because it's a legal term, but we just love you for all that you have done on our behalf. Thank you for that. In Jesus' name. Amen.